I don't know that there's really anybody out there, drivers, that are going to up and say, no, it's not. He shouldn't be able to run for the championship.
Sorry, Disney, we just hired him. And hopefully we can execute a good race.
There's a great episode of the show called Sports Night where one of the people in the show everybody thinks is leaving, and then they all argue about who's going to take whose job and who's going to go here and who's going to go there. I swear this is that's what this has become.
You know, you never know when you're just going to have an off weekend.
I've kind of gotten the ability to have the platform that I want, and it is my platform, and I can speak to whatever I feel like talking about.
We were in the mix, and it makes it a lot more fun when you're in the mix than you are just, struggling and trying to figure out what direction to go.
Yeah, it's tough, and sorry for being bouncy, the roads here.
It's like if you have, the all-you-can-eat buffet every single day of the week, people are going to get tired of it, right? So if it's a special thing, I think people get more excited for it.
Hi, Bo.
Raise your hand up so she can see it. There you go.
Truthfully, even as a company, I think it was, very head-scratching why at the beginning all four of us just went instantly straight to the back. We just really struggled.
Welcome on to the Backstretch. I am News 5's Heather Williams, and we had a bit of a surprise winner last week at St. Louis. Austin Cindric getting the win, his second Cup career victory. And yes, I don't think anyone had Austin Cindric on their Gateway bingo card, but to be fair, Cindric has been running pretty well. He just had the finishes to go with it. Really interesting win, in my opinion. And we're going to talk about this with Chris coming up because, was this luck? Was this performance? As I mentioned, he's been running pretty well. Was it a little bit of both? How long do you have to wait to really see how good a driver is going to be over their career? Cindric is now in his third full-time Cup Series, starting to blossom a little bit. So interesting conversation about NASCAR team development. Also this week, we will talk about the repave at Sonoma, kind of what drivers can expect as they head out there this week. Of course, the ongoing saga of Kyle Larson and whether or not he should have been granted a waiver. He did get his waiver this week. So before we kind of jump into the show, let me real quick play a soundbite with NASCAR's Elton Sawyer about the process to get to the point where they were comfortable giving Kyle Larson his waiver.
Obviously, a lot going on the last week around the waiver for Kyle. We didn't take that lightly. A lot of discussion internally. I'm proud of our team and how we took the due diligence to work through this process, but ultimately landed at giving Kyle a waiver, so he'll be eligible for the playoffs going forward. And essentially, our decision making was, although we had the inclement weather in Indy as well as Charlotte, Kyle made every attempt to get to Charlotte. He was standing in the pit box with his helmet on, ready to go. And unfortunately, we had weather in Charlotte as well, and we weren't fortunate enough to get the race going again. So that's how we landed at our decision. As we went through this process, you look at the waiver, this was without a doubt uncharted waters. In the past, those waivers have been given mostly for medical reasons or situations where drivers were suspended from our event, and those waivers were granted fairly quickly. This one, again, was unprecedented in the fact that we had a driver miss one of our races, one of our Cup races, a championship event, to be at another event. So that's why it took as long as it did. I'm proud of our process.
And we will, of course, talk about that more with Chris coming up in a bit as well. Our guest this week is Daniel Suarez. First time we've had Daniel on the Backstretch. Really enjoyed talking to him. I mean, he's a fan favorite, right? He's so joyful. He's so, happy to be in the sport, feels so blessed to be here. Talk to him about his season, which, we use the cliche of roller coaster a lot. I don't even think roller coaster sums up what his season has been, but we'll talk to him about his season and the optimism they have kind of going into this last stretch before we hit the playoffs, which he's already in because he does have a win this year. And I also will talk to Daniel about getting his citizenship recently. So exciting episode of the Backstretch. Let's get rolling. Joining us now is our crew chief, Chris Carey, who is also the crew chief of the number 75 Food Country Truck in the Craftsman Truck Series. Chris, Austin Cindric was top 10 all day at St. Louis, but he ends up winning the race after the top 2 cars had issues. So how much of this is pure luck, or is part of winning being in the right place at the right time?
A little of both. What I watched from, let's go back to when practice and qualifying was on the air. I watched the qualifying part, and he was a player from the word go. And during the race, I know there was pit strategy and comers and goers and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is at the time when the white flag came out, of course Ryan Blaney was in the driver's seat in the winner's seat until he ran out of fuel. But Austin was right there to pounce on that opportunity. I'm elated for this young man. I've got to be friends with him a few years back. We were together with running some K&N series races for Martin McClure and Eric McClure out of Abington, and won a couple races, and it was just really just a really fun time. And this guy has, I alluded to you, I talked to him night before last, and he is so appreciative. He is so real. He is so grounded. His work ethic, I think, is probably is second to none of anybody, any of those drivers. And I'm just really happy for him. He's just so appreciative of opportunity, and he knows. I mean, he realizes, he grasps what is going on and how lucky he is, and the things that are going on in his life right now. And I don't think this will be the last one. You got to remember, this is, first of all, this wasn't a road course, so you can't say, oh, he's just a really good road race driver and those came, so it really got to put an asterisk beside this. No, that's not the case. And it's a place where not anybody there had a lot of experience in Cup cars. Austin didn't have hardly, got probably as less amount as anybody, especially the competitive drivers at St. Louis. So good for him. I'm just good for him. And we were not too long ago, a few times actually talking about, oh, the Fords are just out to lunch when, man, here
now they've won 3 of the last 4.
Yeah, and they had cars up in the top group the whole weekend at Gateway. And there are quality people with these teams. Penske, Stewart-Haas, Keselowski's team, drivers, crew chiefs, engineers, people. There's experience, there's knowledge, there's want-to factor, all through the above. I think this is just going to be. I think it's going to be a huge shot in the arm, because a lot of the Ford drivers are going to say, "Wait a minute." Austin is not one of the premier guys. He's not one of the odds-on favorites. He's not the one supposed to be to win a racetrack like St. Louis in a Ford. If he can do this, by golly, we can do it. So, probably a turnaround time in this season right before midway.
Yeah. You only have to get hot when it counts, and, they got hot when it counts last year. We'll see if they can sustain it this year. Kyle Larson finally got his waiver for the playoffs. We heard from Elton Sawyer earlier about why it took so long to make that decision. But, Chris, I want to ask you, is it the right decision?
I think it's the right decision. I don't disagree that it took so long to make the decision, because I think they had to think this thing out, because you got to think, okay, we're going to set a precedent here, no matter what they do.
Right.
And what's the reverberations of that down the road? What's the consequences, or the good thing, bad thing about, okay, what is it going to say? What's going to come back to us later on? But Heather, at the end of the day, I listened a little bit to Denny Hamlin talk about it. And of course, he talks a lot about a lot of things, and sometimes it's a little controversial. That's okay. That's fine. I just think it's the right thing to do. I don't know that there's really anybody out there, drivers, that are going to up and say, no, it's not. He shouldn't be able to run for the championship. somewhere along the way that card may fall in front of you. You know, if you're not careful, there might be another situation that, you know, is not exactly like running the Indy 500, but something close, something more like that. And I don't think there's anybody that can disagree that Kyle Larson doing what he did and the effort he put into it was not good, not only for IndyCar, for NASCAR, but for auto racing altogether, especially on the United States.
Right.
I don't think anybody could argue that. You know, I was hoping, along with a lot of people, I said, man, I just hope he wins both races just to say he could and say that I was alive when that happened. But, you know, maybe next year.
Maybe next year, hopefully next year. Hopefully they'll run it next year and he'll have a chance to do that. Front Row Motorsports signs Todd Gilliland to a multi-year contract. The first driver locked in to that expanding organization. One more piece of the silly season puzzle is now filled in, but which drivers should be watching either to get rides or maybe even lose rides as we kind of start to have this merry-go-round go around?
Well, a couple names that are going to be in the news one way or another is the, you know, the Stewart Haas Racing drivers. I think, you know, Josh Berry and Noah Gragson are two that are going to be, you know, people are going to be looking at. They're young, they've had success. They're at least in lower series, you know, and also Chase Briscoe. I mean, these guys are talented race car drivers, and I think, you know, obviously their company is not going to be in business next year. Now, are those guys candidates for Front Row Motorsports? I mean, it looks like it's going to be a Ford camp and so on and so forth. The ties are still there. Does that keep going? This guy doesn't know, but I think that, you know, and I've heard rumors too about Austin Dillon. Is he, you know, are they going to do something there? Well, that deserves discussion. I don't know. It's a little bit early, but those pieces are going to start falling into place soon, whether it be known to the public or not. There's a lot of conversations going on right now, and people that are not happy with what's going on, or people that are simply knowing that, okay, my race team's not going to be here next year. So, and I know that guy just left this team. He's already announced he's going over here, meaning Michael McDowell with Spire. A lot of moving and shaking here. So it's going to start coming together sooner or later.
They don't call it silly season for nothing. There's a great episode of the show called Sports Night where one of the people in the show everybody thinks is leaving, and then they all argue about who's going to take whose job and who's going to go here and who's going to go there. I swear that's what this has become. This week, NASCAR, what do you do? NASCAR heads to Sonoma. They did a repave out there, so what's going to be the key to getting around this new surface?
I think the practice sessions that they have, albeit they be pretty short, I think that it's going to be monumental of who makes the best. Of like when the drivers get out there, and there's going to be a lot more grip than what they've been used to for years there. I mean, Sonoma's been known as probably the slickest racetrack on the circuit. Like zero grip. You can't use the gas, you can't stop fast, you can't turn, you can't do anything fast, because all you're going to do is slide like you're driving on ice, okay? Now it's completely repaved, brand new pavement. There's going to be a ton of grip. The cars are going to be a lot faster. Hopefully the gearboxes and transmission ratios and rear end ratios, NASCAR does a pretty good job with that. They guess pretty good because you can't really change that. So I think when the guys get out there and practice, their communication to their crew chiefs about, okay, what do I need here? What do we need to work on to be the fastest, to be the best? And they're not going to be able to look at that Sonoma notebook very well. They're probably going to be looking more at things like maybe Watkins Glen, you know, because it's a high-speed, fast track. It's probably not as fast as Watkins Glen is, but still, they're going to be a lot faster going through all those curves, even the S's, than they have been before. They're going to be using a lot more throttle, and then when they do go to the brakes, they're going to have to stop pretty quick, so it's going to be demanding.
First of all, Daniel, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start by talking about your season. I feel like roller coaster doesn't even begin to describe the way your season's gone so far. How would you evaluate the way you've run about halfway through the year?
Yeah, you know, actually, I just had an interview and I got asked the same question, and I would say that from 1 to 10, I would put it on a 4 or a 5. Really, we got a win. That was very nice. We got a top 5 there in Texas. We've been trying a lot of different things. I would say that there were a couple months of the season that were really trying some new different things, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. The last couple weeks, I feel like we've been doing more like, okay, we're back in trying to get back in track, and we have had way more speed. I would say that in Charlotte we run much better. We run in the top 10 for the first stage. We run between 10 to 13. That's kind of like the speed that we have. And then Gateway, it was a very strange race. We just never had that position, and we didn't do a good job. I didn't do a good job with qualifying, and then we just didn't do a good job with the strategy. But overall, I feel like our speed is back. It's not a winning speed, but it's a competitive speed in the top 15. But yeah, we still have some work to do. I think that we know our speed is the normal speed is back, but we still have some work to do before the playoffs.
I mean, obviously, getting a win is good, but did the early win put pressure on you, or did it take pressure off of you?
It took pressure off a little bit because you have a little more freedom to try different things. With that being said, right now we are 9 races before the playoffs, and the pressure is start cranking up again, because you have to perform for the playoffs. So right now we are in the mindset of, okay, we're done trying, we're done testing things. Let's get back in the routine, because it's impossible to start the playoffs and just flip a switch and then, okay, now we're going to be competitive. It doesn't work like that. So really for us, the playoffs are starting today, and we have to be competitive right now.
So it seems like this year, when it comes to like the manufacturers, it's gone in stages, right? Early on, it was all about Chevy, then Toyota. Now it's about Ford. Are you surprised that it's kind of gone like that, or is it just constantly a cat and mouse catch up kind of game?
It is, it's a catch-up thing, and like you said, Chevy in the beginning was super strong, and then Toyota, and right now Toyota and Ford are super strong, and right now we're playing catch-up. I just hope that we do our catch-up in the next 2 weeks, before the playoffs, because that's when things are going to really matter. If you look at Ford, Ford had that history. Last year they did the same thing. Last year, in the first half of the year, they didn't do anything, and the second half of the year they were super strong. They won the championship. So we just have to continue to push, continue to do the little things right, and hopefully we can get in our momentum the right way before the playoffs.
So when you look at the schedule for the summer, there's some races on there that seem like really good racetracks for you. Are there any that you've like circled on the calendar, or that you're like, this is where we can maybe grab another win?
Honestly, today, this weekend, here in Sonoma, I think it's a great example. We have to just, do the little things right and execute. This is a new racetrack. There's a lot of new things here for Sonoma, and we have to just make sure that we do our thing, and hopefully, sorry, he's new. We just hired him, and hopefully we can execute a good race.
So what's the key to getting around Sonoma? Obviously the repave, there's a lot of questions about, how this track's going to be this weekend.
Yeah, so far I can tell you that I have 1 lap under my belt. I did a walk the lap, and honestly, I think the racetrack looks great. It looks that it's going to be very fast. But in reality, we're going to really know where we're at in a few hours when we go to practice.
One final question before I let you go, non-really race related. I know you recently became a U.S. citizen. It was fun to follow that journey on social media with you. What's the experience been like for you?
It's very special, especially because it's been a long journey, to do it right and to do it the way that the law, dictate it's supposed to be. It's a long journey. I've been living here in the United States since the middle of 2011, and here we are in 2024, and finally I'm getting actually my citizenship. So it's been a long journey. Very, very thankful for a lot of people that has helped me throughout the way, sponsors, race teams, NASCAR, with support letters and things like that, to be able to get my first sport visa, to get my green card, to get my citizenship. So it's been a journey, and I'm happy to finally get that
For my final thoughts, as we head to Sonoma, I wanted to kind of opine, if you will, about road course ringers. Boris said is running the Xfinity Series this weekend. To me, I know he's not the OG road course ringer, but to me, and when I came into the sport in the early 2000s, he kind of epitomizes the OG road course ringer. Now, if you're kind of new to the sport and like, road course ringer, what is a road course ringer? So basically, that is a guy that would jump into a full-time Cup Series just for the road course races. And when I started covering the sport 24 years ago, 23 years ago, we only went to a couple of road courses. And there wasn't the mandate, all the hullabaloo right now with Kyle Larson about running every race and being playoff eligible. Playoffs didn't exist. You didn't have to run every race to get a championship. And a lot of drivers who were maybe not so good on the road courses would get a guy who was a road course specialist to come and get in their car. Now, generally that meant you weren't running for a driver's championship, but it might help you in the owner's championship or manufacturer's championship, or even help you get a win in theory. Guys like Boris said, Ron Fellows, Scott Pruitt would jump into these cars and run them 1 or 2 weekends a year. What was fascinating to me about the whole thing is that up until, I guess you maybe could call Shane Van Gisbergen kind of a road course runner, although he ran not an existing car. He ran a one-off car for Trackhouse, but you really didn't have those guys winning races. Now, they might have finished higher than whoever was in the car normally that week. But I was always fascinated by, as much as was made back in the early 2000s about road course ringers, none of them ever won races. So I think that the addition of you need to run every race to be eligible for the playoffs, just kind of made drivers, and the addition of more road courses, just kind of made drivers better, up their game at all the road courses. And it's really kind of improved the level of racing in this series. So excited for that. Actually really happy to see Boris said, fill a curly head brigade there at the track this weekend in Sonoma. And it just got me thinking. So there you go. Thanks for joining us on the Backstretch. We'll see you next week.